Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories. I'm your host, retired NYPD Sergeant Bill Cannon, a 27-year veteran of the NYPD. We have a story come out of Paris, France, a heist at the Louvre. And at first, all the news reporters were calling this, or they are calling this, a robbery. And for there to be a robbery, there has to be the threat of force, physical force, the threat of force. And I wasn't aware initially that they did threaten the guards with the devices they held that cut through the glass. So they somewhat looked like guns. So incorrectly, this was deemed a robbery. And you could see some of the items taken, these diamonds and tiaras and literally hundreds and hundreds of diamonds. And this daytime heist on a Sunday afternoon is just really, it is almost like a Hollywood thing, and you could see they brought the truck, they brought their own ladder, their little elevator up to the second floor. So obviously this was well planned out. And in total, there were four thieves that did this daytime robbery of the Louvre in Paris. And they wore these little construction vests. And, nothing disarms people more than to believe that someone is just working in their official capacity. Oh, they're taking a ladder up to the second floor of the Louvre, but they're wearing construction vests. Oh, that must mean they're legit. So no one would think of stopping them. And then when they use these grinders to break the glass and get into the location, it's just really remarkable. And you could see there's a little rendition of it, of the Louvre and how they got in. And again, no one is going to say, oh, these workers came in, I'm going to stop them. Who's going to stop a worker? Someone dressed as someone that's supposed to be there. So that was somewhat of the brilliance of these robbers. And then there was four of them, right? And they escaped on motorcycles. Great way to escape, right? So they escaped on motorcycles and made their way through the streets of Paris with all these jewels. And now we'll get into what happens now. But it seems like at least the government of France is acting like every French citizen should be just horrified. It's not their money. This belongs to the museum or the government of Paris. So you think the average French citizen is shedding tears over this? I think they want to see it in the next movie, like Ocean's 11, one of those movies. This heist is really, catching the attention of everyone, and this famous Museum de Louvre, I can't speak French at all, so I won't even try. But amazing. And, obviously people are already saying without any evidence yet that this is an inside job. It very well could be, but do we know that it is an inside job? I don't think we know that it's an inside job whatsoever, but we're going to talk about it. And there's going to be some people, professional jewel thieves are going to weigh in on this. Everyone's an expert after a robbery like this, but they're not the one that planned it or designed it. So folks, hold on to your hats, hold on to your loved ones, hold on to your cup of coffee, hold on to your wig. You're about to enter true crime from a police perspective. You're about to enter the off the cuff zone. The Police Off the Cuff Zone.
There has to be some common sense.
They were the ones who called 911 to get him help, and now they're calling for change.
Joining me today to discuss this most interesting case is retired NYPD Sergeant, professor at Albertus Magnus College in Connecticut, an attorney at law, Professor Mike Geary. Mike, welcome to the show.
Bill, good evening. Thank you for having me on. This is a good show. Thank you.
Mike, it's pretty interesting when you think about it. I mean, they make it sound like, oh my God, everyone in Paris is heard over. No one's heard over this except the museum and the people, that make perhaps the French government. But it sort of is intriguing to us as to how this happened and the planning. And now when we think of it, I would imagine these jewels are worth millions and millions of dollars. How do they fence these jewels? How do they get rid of them without getting caught? That's the part B to this robbery, Mike.
Yeah, Bill, this stuff is intriguing. And every once in a while in New York City, we'll get like a heist at an art gallery or some sort of jewelry store, and it'll be $1 million in gems taken or something like that, or paintings taken. And you find out they spent the weekend tunneling through underground. They come up from the sewer, they cut a hole in the floor, and they do this all, on a quiet, long holiday weekend. And even though I'm a cop and that's a criminal act, I still admire people that have the moxie to do that sort of thing. And here, when you look at this, it's the same thing. These people knew what they were doing. I mean, they played their part fantastic. And maybe a Sunday afternoon, people are tired. Maybe they don't want to be there. The people who are working security guards, maybe there's not a lot of people, just a few people going around. And, they're not really interested. And people mind their own business. I was in Louvre once, and part of it, it's a huge complex. I was in part of it about 4 years ago for like a couple of hours. And it's huge. And there's so many people. And so therefore, when you walk around, you hide in plain sight. If you have like a construction vest, like one of the people in the chat said, yeah, wear a construction vest. Think Bob, wear a construction vest, carry a clipboard, put a pencil over your ear, walk around, and you're hiding in plain sight. The police and security will probably walk right past you because they figure you're on some sort of job. In a way, I admire this.
Well, I think most people do. They're saying, oh, wow, this is real criminals. These are real professional thieves. And no one got hurt. They really didn't use violence. They threatened violence. And that's what made it from a burglary to a robbery,
Right.
So let me play this. This gives a great outline in regards to how they operated and what they did.
Biggest museum, a symbol of France, now a crime scene. On Sunday morning, in broad daylight, a gang of 4 professional thieves used this mechanical ladder to reach a first-floor window of the Galeria d'Apollon. Using battery-powered disc cutters, 2 of them broke into the gallery's most ornate rooms, housing France's royal jewels. Threatening security guards, they proceeded to smash display cases, stealing 9 items before trying to set fire to the ladder vehicle, then making their escape on scooters. No one was injured in the robbery, with the museum being evacuated and closed for the rest of the day. The 9 stolen items all date from France's 19th century royalty and are encrusted with thousands of diamonds and other precious gemstones. They include a brooch that once belonged to Empress Eugenie, wife of Napoleon III, and a pair of emerald earrings. Empress Eugenie's crown was found near the scene, apparently dropped by the thieves in their haste to get away. The ornate crown features golden eagles and is covered in 1,354 diamonds and 56 emeralds. Investigators are checking it for damage. It's thought criminals prefer to steal jewels because they can be broken down and sold for cash, whereas it's harder to make money from precious stolen artworks, which are easily recognizable. Given these pieces' cultural and historical importance, it's been deemed impossible to put a value on them. The embarrassing incident has raised serious questions about security procedures protecting the museum's collection of over 500,000 items.
This operation lasted almost 4 minutes. It was very quick. We have to say that these are professionals. Organized crime today targets objects of art, and museums, of course, have become targets. Because France, as you know, is a country of heritage, a country with historical objects of heritage with great value.
France's embattled President Emmanuel Macron has vowed prosecutors will do everything possible to bring the thieves to justice, posting, "The theft committed at the Louvre is an attack on our heritage that we cherish because it is our history." Tourists evacuated from the museum were bewildered at what had happened.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe it. That's crazy, right? Wow. Yeah, no. That's something for keep in mind for history, something we won't forget. We could not go to the Louvre because had a robbery.
Well, when you rob the Louvre, that's a big deal to all of France. So I knew something was up because of the way they swept the whole museum.
So, I mean, that's great story. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
it's an amazing story. Are they professionals? I would say so. The fact that they were in and out so quickly, that lets us all know that they know they have a certain time frame before they're going to be inundated with police, and they will not be able to get away.
That's
But
right.
the way they also went up on the ladder, they broke the window, and they're escaping. Apparently, they tried to set the truck on fire before they left the location, and they failed at that. They were probably so, um, in a hurry to get out of there. That look, they also dropped the crown, the queen's crown jewels. There, they left that behind. So I think this is the one right here. So of course they wanted to get away. So now what is everyone thinking is, how do we catch these guys, Mike?
Yeah, Bill, there's only a limited number of people who may have been able to do something like this, carry this out. This is not your pickpocket who's over by the Eiffel Tower, on a Sunday afternoon trying to walk behind tourists and, that sort of thing. No, these are pros. They knew exactly what to do. And, they must have probably been at that Louvre 50 times already, scoping it out, walking around different times. What's the best time? When are there fewest guards? Who's actually in this corridor? Does anybody come up to this section of the museum on any sort of basis? There's only a small number of people, and I'm sure France is, and they're I think they're called the Sûreté, I think is their like internal police. Like I think it's RFBI. They're going through every single possible name, trying to track down everybody who may have done any sort of jewel thieving in the past or any sort of artwork theft. And they probably already contacted Interpol and looking for looking for any possible suspects. You hope there's a fingerprint. I doubt it. I'm sure these guys, did not wear their regular fingers. They had gloves on, and so therefore they were smart enough to do that. I think they tried to burn that little crane they had. I think probably to destroy maybe a fingerprint or DNA. These guys were sharp, and they had the little scooters. They just blended right in. But this is probably going to be, hopefully for the French gendarme there in the Sûreté, that this is going to be a brief sort of investigation. But this may go on for quite a while, and if they're good, you may never catch these people.
No, I think that one of the ways that all criminals get caught is that they talk. They tell people what they did because they're so proud. We hit the Louvre for X amount of dollars. We got this, we got that. So they tell someone. In a heist like this, you can't tell anyone. But that is going to be the downfall of one of these. Let's not forget, there's 4 robbers in this. 2 were the getaway guys. 2 actually did the robbery. The other 2 assisted. But we all know when you're acting in concert, you may as well have done it because they would all get charged when this goes down. But I think that the way they approach it, let me just put a couple of more pictures up on the screen from this. The heist cut through hushed corridors with speed and ease that humiliated the nation. Authorities are now racing against their own clock. In the space of just 7 minutes, in the casual daylight of Sunday morning, 4 suspects stole 9 pieces of France's crown jewels from the Louvre. They robbed not just the most visited museum in the world, but also the French people themselves, the government said Monday. Officials are now scrambling to reassure the public about security at key cultural sites and find the jewels stolen from the museum before they can be broken up and melted down. The thieves used a Monte Mubles, a truck mounted with a basket lift, commonly used to hoist furniture into Paris's inaccessible apartment blocks. So that might be a traceable item. Yeah. The truck, they probably would have rented it from someone, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. And tracing the truck, they may very well lead back to the bad guys. What do you think?
Bill, I think you're right. That may be their Achilles heel, because we've seen this in the 1995 bombing of the Murrah office building, where they got the vehicle identification number off what was left of the truck after the explosion, and that led to Timothy McVeigh. We got the 1993, I think it is 1993 bombing of the World Trade Center, the first time where the bomb went off, and they had part of the license plate, and they figured out who rented it. That may be more than anything else. They're undoing. Even if people don't talk, they may get them that way. And then, as you pointed out, and I think Bob in the chat pointed out, that they're going to break these things down, because you can't sell that crown. You got to break it down into a million pieces. And who do you even trust to break it down for you, to keep their mouth shut when you bring it to them? That crane, that little crane, may be their Achilles heel that brings this to a swift conclusion, because you just don't find that anywhere. It's not like a bicycle. That is a vehicle. So and they probably rented it, and I'm sure they had to rent it, but it's gonna be found out very quickly where that thing came from. And as you've seen, and you've done this, and Bill has done this, when you get this kind of manhunt, it's all detectives on board until you get this person, and people are chomping at the bit. They can't wait to lay their hands on these guys and get them.
Absolutely. Bob Gable from the chat. Yeah. Where is the security? Bob, museum guards are just that, museum guards. They're really just sort of scarecrows. They're not going to take any action, affirmative action, against someone that, especially that threatens them with what they thought could have been a firearm. So they're not going to, and they're trained not to do that. So when we talk about where is security, security is really nothing more in museums than a scarecrow. I'm sorry, they're not armed. Are going to take on professional robbers? I think not. And it showed in this instance they didn't. So let me put this up from CBS this morning here.
That happened at one of the world's most famous museums in broad daylight. Thieves smashed an upstairs window at the Louvre in Paris yesterday while tourists wandered nearby. Burglars made off with priceless jewels, and they're actually still at large. Elizabeth Palmer is in Paris. Elizabeth, good morning.
Good morning. This crime is all anybody's talking about here in Paris today. Not only the sheer audacity of it, but the fact that the Louvre that you can see behind me is something of a fortress, and people are stunned that it proved so vulnerable.
It was a heist in plain sight. The thieves parked a mobile ladder against the wall of the Louvre at 9 on Sunday morning. Then police say they broke this window and made straight for the sumptuous Apollo Gallery, where France's crown jewels are on display. It took them 7 minutes and a circular saw to steal 9 priceless objects, including a pearl and diamond tiara made for Napoleon III's wife, Eugenie, and a whole sapphire-studded set. David Chanteron is an art historian who's worked in the Louvre.
What will the thieves do with the pieces they've robbed?
It's very difficult to know what's happened after this moment.
It's possible, he says, the robbery was a special order for a private collector, but more likely the treasures will be broken up and the gems sold. All that is, except this crown. The robbers dropped it in the street as they made their getaway.
Wasn't the glass in the display cabinets reinforced somehow?
Incredibly, he says, it wasn't. After the robbery, tourists were ushered to the exits. Many disappointed not to see the star attraction here, the Mona Lisa. Though not Jim and Joan Carpenter from California.
It's great. This is our last day of a long trip, and this is the most exciting part today.
There are hundreds of tourists back here again this morning, anxious to see the scene of the crime, but they won't be allowed in. The museum has just confirmed that it will be closed all day for a second day while that police investigation gears up. Gail?
Liz, it does sound like something out of Ocean's 11. Was George Clooney on the scene?
That was
Right.
dopey. But you know something, I, obviously these thieves, these robbers, this was well planned. They were most likely probably 100% wearing gloves. Uh, the best place to perhaps get some forensic evidence will be in from the vehicle that they traveled in. They could have inadvertently left DNA on the seats, on the windows of the car, things that they touched. So I would think that they'll do a complete forensic workup on that truck. But look, 7 minutes exposure is not a long time. Someone asked in the chat, when they broke through the glass, wouldn't that have sent the alarms off? Yes, but they were in and out of there in 7 minutes. So even most places, even the most excellent police departments on this earth, 7 minutes is not a long time to get to the scene when there's all kinds of traffic, depending on also where the police are responding from. So the police, the thieves probably had it planned very well. It's like, we got exactly 7 minutes to get in and the hell out of there. And then they jumped on motorcycles and boom, they were out of there, Mike.
Yeah, I think 7 minutes is I saw there was a movie years ago. I think it was Al Pacino, and they talk about 7 minutes getting in and out of a bank. That huge shootout like 30 years ago in California, in LA, with the two robbers. They had Kevlar vests from their ankles all the way up to their neck, and they were completely bulletproof pretty much. And they were just shooting it out with the cops for about 45 minutes. They had robbed a Bank of America. They had their watches set for like 7 minutes. So they knew they could not stay. Once it hit 7, they had to be out of there because they understood how long it's going to take for somebody to call 911, get the police dispatcher, get the units to the scene. And in Paris, depending on that area, there are a lot of small side streets. And because, that street was that grid was laid out, hundreds and hundreds of years ago. So the police may have run into some sort of traffic. And so 7 minutes doesn't seem like a lot, but if they're well planned and well executed, once they get on those motorcycles, they drop the crown jewel, that one huge crown, that was wonderful, but they could be out of there and just into the crowd within 30 seconds. Once you turn that corner and you start driving around, they'll split up and they'll go different directions. That's it. So these people, whoever they are, if this is their first or their 100th, jewel theft, they did an amazing job. And thankfully, absolutely, knock wood, not a single person was injured or not a single person was killed. And that's the most important thing.
Mike, one of the things that I almost guarantee is that they had a predetermined location that they were fleeing to after the robbery. And in addition, they probably have also predetermined people they are dealing with to fence these diamonds and perhaps not even fence them, but to melt down the gold, to take the diamonds, recut the diamonds, because if they can't sell these or make money off it, what was the point of this robbery, putting them at risk of getting caught? This is a huge robbery. So I would also venture to say that this is very organized crime. And, the old expression, birds of a feather flock together. They're flocking together with other thieves, which leads you to believe thieves can also kill each other to take the booty, as we've seen in lots of robberies that go bad. So they will have to do all of these things. And the investigators perhaps may know some of the players here without specifically identifying them, because guess what? The streets talk. Mm-hmm. And I know people that weren't in law enforcement don't totally understand that, but the thieves talk and the streets talk, and it may get back to them. Oh, this was so-and-so, or I've heard it's so-and-so. So that is a start, but there also is forensic evidence that they potentially could have. The other thing I would want to know is, how did the robbers communicate with each other? Was it via cell phones? Because if it was or is, there's another investigative lead they can use: geofencing, pull up those cell phones that are being used at that time, at that location, and boom, maybe they're that sophisticated that they wouldn't have used their cell phones. But most thieves aren't that smart, Mike.
Yeah, one of the things they have to worry about, like you said, the DNA and geofencing of the cell phones. As you said, the streets have, can talk and other people talk. If any of their friends that know about this, that maybe did not take part, but that maybe knew about it, or even one of them gets pinched in some other criminal act, the police could always trade. Look, you can help us solve this. We'll drop this from a felony to a misdemeanor, or we'll talk. But there's always that let's make a deal. They better hope that no one who knows about this in their little circle or any of them gets arrested for anything, because they are then vulnerable, like as you say, to being spoken of and their name dropped. And along with the geofencing too, that if they talk by cell phone, and they probably did, then geofencing would put 4 phones at that location for a short period of time, and you've got the makings of the beginning of the end of their career. But yeah, they may have already, I think some of them at least, may have already come to the attention of the police in the past for other things. These aren't rookies doing this. These are people who've had done things like this prior and maybe have gotten caught in the past.
Mike, the other thing is, and there were things that we didn't just mention, but you see this this picture on the screen. That truck, where did it come from? I'm sure if Paris is anything like New York City, there are video cameras everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
They may be able to track exactly where this truck came from. And that gives them another avenue of investigation. And where did they get this truck from? Was this truck rented? Was it stolen? Where did they get it from? Those are other investigative leads that they had. And like you said, during the World Trade Center bombing, the 1993 one, to show you how stupid criminals are, the idiot that rented the truck went back to get his deposit back. And that's how they caught the fool. The police had already been there. He goes to get his money back. You just almost took down the World Trade Center. So, the reason I say this is that perhaps these guys that did this robbery, the heist at the Louvre, the robbery at the Louvre, they'll keep talking. They'll keep, they can't keep their mouths shut. Now there's a word from our sponsor. Wrong sponsor. Here's our sponsor.
And now a word from our sponsor. FanDuel's got an offer you don't want to miss this NFL season. New customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet $5, and if it wins, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use all across the app. You can build parlays, bet player props, ride the live lines, whatever your style. FanDuel has you covered. The NFL season is here. The only question is, are you ready to play? You must be 21 years or older and present in select states. For Kansas, an affiliation with Kansas Star Casino, or 18 plus and present in D.C., Kentucky, or Wyoming. First online real money wager only. $5 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets, which expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbookfanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut or visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 1-800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NEW YORK or text HOPE New York in New York.
Folks, if you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button. Give us a thumbs up if you want to contribute to us financially. We have a Patreon with 4 different levels. We also have a YouTube channel membership with 5 different levels. We appreciate all you folks that have been supporting this show. I want to play a little bit. This is a CNN's take on this.
Louvre Museum in Paris. The heist took just 7 minutes. Investigators say they used an angle grinder and a blowtorch to get inside the ornate Apollo gallery. And then they took off with 8 pieces of jewelry. They dropped a 9th piece during their escape. And this morning, there's real concern the jewels might never be recovered. CNN's Melissa Bell outside the Louvre this morning. I gotta say, I mean, an uproar in Paris over this.
Oh, there is. I mean, such huge security breaches. The idea that these 4 men, we understand that they're looking for, could have broken into the room housing France's crown jewels, John, making off with such treasures of inestimable value. That's what French authorities are saying. This isn't so much about the price of the gems involved or the gold, although that would be considerable if it was all melted down and sold. It is that these are priceless objects when it comes to France's cultural heritage. You're talking about the crowns, the tiaras, the brooches, the earrings, the necklaces worn by the queens of France in the 19th century. So yeah, there's a great deal of outrage this morning in the French press. Many newspapers describing it as the heist of the century. So brazen was it? So quick was it? So efficient was it? These are, after all, we understand from investigators, extremely well-trained criminals who had very carefully plotted getting in and out of the Louvre Museum. Still, that it should have been possible for that to happen at 9:30 a.m. in broad daylight when the museum was about as packed as it is now. This is what Paris looks like on a Monday morning or a Sunday morning. There were people everywhere. They managed to get in and out. There was some altercation, we understand, with one of the security guards inside. The alarms went off. The museum was evacuated. Still, they went off and got away down the quays of the Seine on their high-speed scooters, carrying at least 8 pieces of jewelry, having dropped the crown of the Empress Eugenie, the wife of Napoleon III, slightly damaged but at least retrieved. Now this manhunt is underway. We were just speaking out here to a French senator, John, who believes that none of the burglars, nor indeed any of these pieces of jewelry, are likely still even to be inside France. And so what authorities and investigators say, crucial period is that first 48 hours, and the clock is ticking. By tomorrow morning, we'll have reached it. And if nothing is found, it could be that we never get to the bottom of this at all.
The jewelry will be cut up or butchered and sold. I don't think anything else. I mean, we have to wait investigation. Maybe there will be a ransom, but I doubt. Seriously, regarding the price of the stone and the high level of the price of the gold, I doubt that these things will never come back.
So a lot of questions about whether this was a commission. These burglars took these pieces of jewelry for a private collection, say, to keep them intact, or whether, and this is the great fear that's increasingly being spoken of, they will have been stolen to be melted down, in which case these treasures would be lost to France for good.
Yeah, you break up the jewels, really almost no way to find them. Melissa, you know, people see heist movies and they see lasers and high tech and computers here. From what it seems, these guys smashed a second-floor window, went in, grabbed the stuff, and left. Other than getting that sort of ladder up there, this didn't seem particularly high-tech.
These were pretty rudimentary pieces of equipment. An angle grinder, John, was used to smash open that window. The entire operation, from the moment they pulled up that truck with its mechanical lift, broke through the window, smashed through the display windows, grabbing those pieces of jewelry, and made their way back out, getting away on those scooters. 7 minutes in all. It took them very little time, but you're quite right. There is this sort of disconnect between the value, the pricelessness of what they've made off with, France's crown jewels after all, and the very basic equipment that they used to get in there. No fancy layers, no high-tech equipment, none of the Hollywood trappings that you would imagine for a heist as brazen, as spectacular, and as successful as this one.
Yeah,
I think, I think that people want to see the high-tech stuff, and they're a little disappointed when this was like a smash and grab. They got pretty smart. They got a truck with a ladder on it, took them up to the second floor. They had these grinders that took care of the windows. They went in there, and the grinders looked like almost like the shape of a pistol. So they scared back the security guards from taking any action, not that they would. They're sort of trained not to. And I don't mean to be disparaging towards security guards, but really they're trained to just be eyes and ears and really to basically do nothing. So, but they're there to be the eyes and ears. The other thing is people wonder, like, security is really protecting assets and reducing risks. Now, some may say, well, the whole design of this Louvre isn't protecting the assets because they just broke through a window. But would you like to go to a museum that had steel covering where the windows should be, or concrete or brick? No, that would sort of ruin the experience, wouldn't it? So yeah, it's called hardening the target. Yeah, you could harden the target, but you could also ruin the experience for people that like to go to museums. So what they do then is have video cameras, security guards, motion detectors, cameras all over the place, and glass. They think the glass that covers the cases that these jewels are in. But that simply enables the public to be able to look at these jewels and enjoy the experience. If they harden the target to a point where people couldn't enjoy the experience, what is the point of having a museum, Mike?
Yeah, I've been to the National Gallery down in Washington, D.C. several times and have seen the Constitution and the Declaration, a copy of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, an original copy. And there's armed guards, and there is glass that's about 6 inches thick. It's probably bulletproof and bomb-proof. And so we take that, and it recesses into the floor after like 5 o'clock at night. So we make that really theft-proof. But here you've got this, the French have a different way of doing it. As you say, they'll use cameras, they'll maybe have a motion detector, especially off hours. If they say they close up at 9 o'clock, for until 9 o'clock the next morning, it may be just some lights and maybe one security guard. That is a huge area, the entire Louvre. It is multiple stories, multiple buildings built over the course of many, decades. And so it's not like a modern, how we would construct a museum today, or that you might see in New York City. This is very spread out because it's all these old buildings, somewhat disjointed. And my fear also is when you look at this, is there's going to be a fallout here, and for whoever is in charge of security, that person now has to worry about their job. Why didn't they do their job better? The questioning everything. Why didn't they have better security? Why didn't they have better personnel? Why didn't they have armed personnel? Why didn't they do this? Why didn't they do that? That poor person may not have a huge budget like we think they may have. Maybe they actually did all the best they could with what they were given, but their head is on the chopping block in this case. And so there's going to be a lot of residual fallout from this case, looking at who is to blame for this really embarrassing situation.
Mike, it's so true. And we always, we would see that on the police department. Mm-hmm. They would dump commanding officers of precincts if something bad happened in their command, even if they weren't there. They could have been out on vacation, and they could say, well, you should have been there, And I've seen commanding officers lose their command over things they had zero control over. But you're right. If the Paris, France government people or anything like in the United States, they'll be looking for someone to blame. And the other thing was, could this be, and it keeps getting brought up, could this have been an inside job? Could 1 or 2 or 3 or even 4 of these individuals have worked in the Louvre prior to this? How did they have such insight? How did they know that this location that they chose to go in, was that the weak point? Is that the best place we could do what we did? Pull a truck up, put the ladder up and climb up to the second floor there. They knew exactly what they were doing. So they obviously had studied the location, perhaps maybe even gotten blueprints, or a lot of these CAD programs, you could pull up the blueprints of a building right on it and see what you're up against, And what's to say that maybe they went there weeks and months before? There could be free citizens. They go into the museum. They do what we call a reconnaissance. Let's look at the location. How much time do we have in there? What is our exposure? Will any of these security guards take action? Do we have to worry about that? So all of these things, they would pre-plan. And I think what they probably said to themselves, look, just point those instruments we have at them that look like they could be guns, and that'll hold the security guards back from doing anything. And guess what? They were correct. That's what they did. Mike.
Yeah, they have to do this. They had to have a lot of familiarity. You're right. They had to have done reconnaissance numerous times on numerous dates, numerous occasions, looking over things. And you go there as in any museum, you go there to admire the paintings or the artwork or the jewelry, whatever. You're looking down. You're looking at the article. You're not looking up in the corners to see if you are on a camera or if there's a camera down there. They're going to go there and they're going to look for all of those things. And maybe, as you said, the possibility that maybe one or two or maybe several of them have worked there in the past. I'm sure if you worked there 6 years ago, 8 years ago, and and I'm sure they don't move the exhibits around. If you were there, say 8 years ago, 2017, and you left that job, those jewels were probably in that exact spot 8 years ago. So you knew exactly where to go. Very interesting is they went up on the outside rather than go through a hallway, on the first floor and having to go upstairs where they may be trapped. You go in and out through the upstairs window. I mean, that's simplicity, but it's brilliant simplicity because you did everything so quickly. But yeah, they had to have some familiarity, and I wouldn't be surprised whatsoever if at least one of them was a former employee who kind of really knew the rhythm of the security. You're not going to worry about the people who are coming and going because there's many of them, and the more people maybe is better for you, the visitors and the admirers, but they may know one or some of the security and maybe know how security actually works. What is security protocol? Maybe one of them was a security guard in the past. So yeah, this shows that these people had tremendous knowledge. They were not amateurs. They knew what they were doing. They were quick. They were decisive. They didn't walk around, maybe I'll take that. Maybe I'll take that. No, they knew exactly what they were looking for. Something as, and I agree with the lady in the video. This, the fear is that these things have already been broken down and you're never going to get the crown jewels back. And it's all just going to be, given to someone to cut up and they'll just bask with the money. And people might be buying, chopped up pieces of a tiara that belonged to some queen 300 years ago. But you can't keep those, earrings and bracelets and crown jewels in one piece. It's too easily identifiable.
Absolutely. New Jersey, Kathy. So no one saw them climbing the building like Spider-Man with a ladder. Sounds like an inside job with assistance from the security staff. New Jersey, Kathy, of course, everyone saw them. But guess what they did that was very simple but brilliant? There's one of the robbers right there. You see he has that yellow construction vest on? People were just thinking, oh, they're just workers. They're just doing some work. They climbed up there and, just a little outfit like that, a construction vest, can convince people in their mind, oh, they belong here. They're not doing anything nefarious. And that disarms people. And on the part of the thieves, on the part of the robbers, that was brilliant because that did disarm many people. Let's just put on construction vests. Then we start banging the window. They just think we're trying to fix something or we're there to do some work. And that's what disarmed all these people. And again, to the thieves, brilliant. This is from NBC News.
Former FBI agent Robert Whitman, who founded the agency's rapid deployment art crime team during his career, helped recover $300 million worth of art and cultural property. Robert, you're the perfect guest for this moment. I mean, first of all, I was just surprised that it was apparently so easy to break into the Louvre in broad daylight.
Yeah, the point there was, I think people thought that these guys were working at the Louvre. In other words, they were doing some type of construction, so they could make that noise, and then people would think, oh, it must be normal because that can't be a robbery in the daytime.
Yeah.
And they were wearing the yellow construction vests. I've seen that before. I was involved in an undercover investigation when a group stole paintings from a museum in Nice, and they were doing the same thing. They had the same kind of overall coveralls on, like they were employees. and they made their getaway on mopeds. It's a pretty common way of escaping in Europe because of the easy ability to navigate through the traffic, and so they can get away quickly.
Sounds like you think this is probably at least partly an inside job. To Molly's point there, when you steal millions of dollars worth of jewels from the Louvre, you don't just go into a pawn shop. So what do they do with it?
Well, they are going to look at it. We hope that they're going to try to sell it. Yeah. There's different ways that they'll try to monetize this. That's what it's all about, making money. So the worst way would be as if they melt it down, you know, pop all the diamonds, pop the gems, and try to sell them one by one.
Have you checked 47th Street here?
Yeah.
That's where that could happen.
It could be, you know. But I think that that's the worst situation. The best case scenario is maybe they come around and try to ransom them back. And what will happen there is possibly, you know, the country of France might offer a reward for information.
Got it.
If you're going to do a crime, the way you get away with it is by doing it by yourself, leaving no evidence. In this case, and thirdly, tell no one. In this case, it was a group of people, so there's more than one person. They left a lot of forensic evidence, you know, behind. And basically, I'm going to tell you, they're going to tell people that they did it.
Right.
So when this reward number comes out, you're going to have people calling in saying, you know, we know something about this.
They're going to catch them.
Robert, quickly, where does this stand in sort of the history of like thefts that you've seen? How big of a deal is this?
This is audacious. This is probably the fourth gold theft I've seen in the past few years in Europe. Just a month ago, September 17th, the Natural History Museum in Paris was hit again, just like this, using cutters, all the same MO. And they stole a bunch of nuggets of gold worth about 600,000 euros.
Wow.
So I think, you know, if I was an investigator on this case, I'd be looking at that and this and seeing similarities, thinking there might be an organized group out there.
And the price of gold is so high right now, so there's a lot of motivation. Robert, thank you so much. Good to have you here. Appreciate it.
So many people have said about that perhaps they would try to get a ransom from the French government, but that gives you more exposure. If you're trying to extort money, I don't see them doing that. You know, in 1988, I was in citywide anti-crime, and a lot of times we work in Manhattan South area, and they were having a spate of front breaks, and it was the way this group, and it was organized, did front breaks was they actually had Grand Furies, which was a car that the police used back in 1988. And they had the FBI light on the dashboard. They would get a van and they would drive it right through the front window of like Tiffany's or Fred the Furrier. And then they would just clean it out. And if anyone questioned the Grand Fury with the FBI light, would say, "Oh, we're the police. We're here. We got it all under control." And then they would just give an escort across the 59th Street Bridge to these robbers. These burglars, actually, because they didn't use any force. But it was sort of ingenious. And before they hit the location, they would call 1013s via their phone, or they call on a payphone at a location about 40 or 50 blocks away from here. So every cop in Manhattan South would be on the 1013. A 1013 is a code a police officer needs assistance. So all the cops would go to the 1013, and there was no one available to respond to this job. And eventually they got caught and they put them away for numerous burglaries because they were doing it for a couple of years. And it was sort of interesting the way they just drove the van right through the window. And then, you know, they would just leave the van in the store after they cleaned it out and then take off over the 59th Street Bridge into Queens. So I sort of see this as very well planned, very simple, but, you know, people are amazed. Look, why did they do it during the day? Why not? The place was open. The plan they had was one that no one was going to try to stop them because they thought they were construction workers. And for all you folks in the chat that think security guards are there to do anything else but be scarecrows, that's their job. They're not putting their hands on anyone. Maybe if someone like tried to damage something, maybe they'd intervene. But robbers that look like they potentially had firearms, Security guards are not intervening. They are the eyes and ears of security. Everything else also is going to be caught on video cameras. I'm sure what they did inside was all caught on video cameras. Mike.
Yeah, no security guard is going to, they don't get paid well, and no security guard is going to die for a piece of jewelry. No way. No, they want to go home to their families at night. So they just figure, look, there is, I'm going to back off. I would back off and let, whatever insurance there is or whatever embarrassment there is, there you got guys pointing what I think is a firearm at me. I'm backing off. And I hope that they've left a fingerprint somewhere, and like they left the vehicle outside, whatever it is. But I'm not dying for a piece of jewelry, and so I don't blame the guards for backing off and trying to be aggressive. You're not going to tackle that guy like a football player because they look like they're stealing a piece of artwork. I'm not. No. My eyes and my ears are my best weapon. Let them go. And hopefully we'll get them later when the police come, but that's about it. So yeah, the security, they're there just to make people feel good. Like there's a security guard walking around with a blue uniform or whatever, shirt and tie, and they look good. And maybe they'll help you with directions or whatever. But other than that, they're there just to make the regular visitors from like all over Europe, like I was one time years ago, just make you feel good. And that's it. Nothing more than that. As you say, they probably don't have pepper spray. They're not going to have any sort of firearm, and they're just going to back away, see if they get to a phone somewhere and call their version of 911. But that's it.
Absolutely. Heather, whatever from the chat, it wasn't a cheap looking ladder, looked official building work thing on the truck you're talking about. Heather, that is one area that we believe that is traceable, that truck. Where did they get that truck? Was it rented? Did they steal it? Is it belong to a bad guy who's on the criminal fringe? That is traceable. And they're also, let me just play this from ABC News.
This morning for the jewel thieves behind a daring daylight heist at the largest art museum in the world. Police say 4 men disguised as construction workers broke into the Louvre using this mobile elevator before making off with priceless pieces of France's crown jewels.
This is the heist of the decade, targeting the Louvre, the world's most famous museum. It's as bad as it gets, especially for France, but also for the entire world.
Police are investigating this image from a video obtained by BFM TV, which they believe shows one suspect trying to access one of the jewelry cases. The suspects making off with 8 items, including sets of sapphire and emerald necklaces and earrings, 2 diadems and elaborate diamond brooches. This one purchased by the Louvre in 2008 for just under 7 million euros. It all played out 9:30 Sunday morning. Officials immediately shutting down the museum.
And all of a sudden, we were kind of rushed by a big mob of police that were running by, and they were all running to one of the wings of the Louvre, and they were trying to get into one of the side doors.
Visitors inside quickly evacuated. Police say the masked robbers drove up to the side of the museum in a truck mounted with a ladder described as a mobile freight elevator. Police say the lift was extended up to a second-floor window, which the thieves broke open using an angle grinder, a handheld power tool used for metalwork. From there, they're alleged to have threatened security guards before ransacking the Apollo Gallery, where Napoleon III's crown jewels were on display. Police say they tried to set fire to the lift they used before they fled. The raid lasted all of 7 minutes before they escaped on scooters. But the gang seems to have dropped the 200-year-old crown of Empress Eugenie, Napoleon's wife. It was damaged but recovered at the scene.
You cannot replace them. They are so important for French history that you cannot sell these pieces. What everybody fears is that the gold and the silver will be melted down and the jewels will be taken out and sold separately.
Now, along with that crown, the thieves look to have dropped a blowtorch, the power tools they used to get in, gloves. Forensics experts are going to be poring over those items to find any clues to make sure they find these items before they disappear forever. Guys.
So, some really traceable things there. Of course, the truck. Now they used a torch. Like, where did they rent these? Could they trace them back to where they got them from? All of these things are traceable items of evidence, which no doubt the French investigators will be all over this. And look, I predict that eventually these individuals will be brought to justice. However, will they recover the booty, the loot? I think that's doubtful. Mike?
Yeah, Bill, sooner or later, this is a huge embarrassment to the museum and the French police. They're fantastic. This is what they live for, to want a manhunt, get somebody like this. They're dying to get these people. And if they catch at least even one of them, that person's going to go to prison for the rest of their life. They're going to be paying heavily. And if they can't get back any of those diamonds and those pieces of jewelry, and it's all been broken down, that person is screwed. I think that they will probably figure this one out. And like you say, that vehicle, they had to come from somewhere. And it's not homemade. So therefore, it's got a vehicle identification number on it. They got to figure it out. They know where it is. And I bet, as someone even mentioned in the chat earlier, and they said, I bet law enforcement already knows a lot more than they're leaving out to the public. And I believe that's true. So I don't think this is going to be a long manhunt.
100%. This is from News Nation.
Joining me now is Larry Lawton, a former jewel thief himself. Although I guess I should say, Larry, reformed jewel thief, I'm assuming.
Yes, very much so.
Okay, but still some insight here for us. What do you make of this robbery that happened, in broad daylight? People were in the museum when this happened.
Well, that didn't surprise me. All of mine, over 25 jewelry stores, $18 million was done during the day. Whenever you had to plan them. Let me give you just a little insight in that. You take this heist. It was very well planned. They had to know who was going to be near the motorcycles, was cops going. When you case a place like this, you have to know so much. You have to know where the cops are going to be. Like in my case, where the mailman would be coming. Same with here. They knew exactly what time to go in there. They knew where that truck was. So they had inside help. Somebody, it could have been with the construction company that really was working there, or it could have been an employee of the museum. It could have been anybody, but they had to know exactly where to go straight away. They weren't looking for something. They went right to it. Then they had to know they can get through the barrier, the glass or the protection it had. They really missed the boat on security as well. So I'm blaming the Louvre on that. And I think that's what a lot of this is about. They got a lot of mud on their face because they didn't protect stuff that could be ruined forever. And I could get into that if you'd like.
What do we know about the jewels that were stolen, how they were, protected in the museum at that time? What was the security around them?
We spoke about this earlier. Like, you can harden a target to the point where it's no fun for people to go to a museum because they can't have access to look at some of these beautiful artifacts. And so this former jewel thief, I find it funny that he's talking about security. But as we said, they can harden the target, but they choose not to. And again, what we know about security guards also is that they're not expected to take police action. These days, you're lucky the police are even allowed to take police action, So that's what we're at right now. And what we're looking for is, of course, we'll keep following this case, but what we're looking for is the lead that gets the first one. Once you get one, you got all four of them. Mike, your final thoughts.
Yeah, we'll follow this. This is an excellent story, well done by seemingly professionals. And the best thing is that no one got hurt. I'm really happy about that. Nobody lost their life. So, and I hope the French police are already hot on their trail.
100%. Folks, I'm Bill Cannon from Police Off the Cuff. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll bring you this as we get updates on it. Have a great night, everyone, and God bless.
Good night.
One episode just ain't enough.